Greetings once again. It is great to be back, and it is great to be back in 2019 with some more episodes of Transformation Tuesday. We are recording this just at the end of 2018, but you will not be getting this until after the new year. It has been an exciting year on Defining Dad Bod. We've had a great year on the podcast. It has been a thrill for me to be part of it for my first year, and I am glad to be back in 2019 with more stories. I look forward to sharing great stories all year long. And I am very excited in kicking off the first couple of weeks here with the New Year stories. This is a story I think that will really, really be a great one. I am excited about it myself because this is somebody that I have kind of known, I guess we can say, for a while now. Travis, Kane, and I we're pretty good friends. We've actually talked a few times. I don't think we've actually ever talked like this though, which is kind of the strange part. But Travis and I was trying to think back, Travis, how we got to know each other. I think it was through Order of Man is where I think we kind of first bumped into each other.
I believe so.
Yeah. And then after that, I was a part of another Facebook group called The Driven Dad, and the guy that ran that group, Chris Hughes, was trying to grow it and said, "Hey, whoever you got that you know, who you think would be a part of this would be good for it." He said, "Just invite him on." And you know, man, I have to tell you, you were one of the first people I thought of because I kind of have watched you. We're relatively close geographically. I think we're probably only about 3-4 hours apart at the most. But I have watched you kind of do your own thing in a really unique and creative way. It has been, I have to tell you to start this off, it has been really inspiring to me to watch you because I think what I think will make this story different as we go through it is, there's so many of us who have so many, I'll be real honest, we have a lot of first world luxuries when it comes to our health. We have, gyms all over the place. We have trainers to talk to in person. We have all of these things. And then there are some people who don't have these luxuries every day. And Travis, you are one of them. And what has amazed me, and I hope really encourages people as they hear your story, is really to hear how much you have done on your own. It has been a huge impressing thing for me to watch. And I think it's great. And I have watched you stay incredibly focused in your fitness, which obviously is one of the things that we'll talk about. But, I have to tell you, and I'm going to embarrass you right off, Travis. I have been very impressed, not only with your fitness, but also watching how you take that priority and make sure that it never supersedes the priority of your family. Your wife and your kids are obviously incredibly important to you. They are obviously people that you have focused a lot of attention and love and caring on. You teach them amazing things, and you do cool stuff. And I know we'll get into that as we go, but I just want to tell you that from my vantage point, watching you and watching you kind of live your life out. And your wife is a part of this because your wife is on Facebook too. And your wife is hilarious because she does not pull punches. Neither of you guys pull punches. And that's what I like. And I think whether it's fitness or whether it's just day-to-day living, you guys don't pull punches. You guys live real life. And that's so important in this day and age when we always talk about, highlight reels, whether it's fitness or whether it's family. Both of you guys do it very real. So what I would love to do, I'll stop gloating all over you right now. But I mean, what I would love for you to do is just kind of give us a little bit of who you are at this point in your life, where you live, your family, and we'll kind of go from there. Once we get that, what you do, once we get that down, we'll kind of jump into a little bit more of your backstory. But just kind of give us who you are right now, where you're at in life.
Travis Kane, 39 years old, just ticking on 40 here, and I've got some big goals for that number 40. Hope that all stays together. Got 4 children. Been married this year. It'll be 15 years. I better not screw that up. No, just blessed beyond just anything you could ever imagine with wife and children. I don't deserve what I got. I work hard for it, but I live in Augusta, Illinois. Brought me probably 50 miles from my hometown where I grew up. I grew up in a town called Bushnell, Illinois, and probably 50 miles north of here. I never really lived anywhere but there. And I moved to this area, I believe, when I was around 19 or 20, and met my wife a little later, but I'll get into that later. But yeah, I graduated high school, and I tried to get into the Marines out of high school, but I had injured my knee in a motorcycle wreck, and I had 96 or 97, I believe, and I got rejected because I had steel in my knee. And, that was kind of a beginning downward spiral. Not a downward, but just the rejection I didn't do well with. You know, I had buddies joining the Marines, whatever, and I wanted to do that. And, I got shot down. So kind of took it like an 17, 18-year-old kid would. I knew everything. I was in good shape. It didn't sit well with me. And I kind of got on a shitty path there, and just a lot of alcohol and, typical things. But
Okay.
Let's
jump back before we get into all that, because that's a good part of your story. But I want to jump back a little bit. So pretty much rural Illinois, and let me ask you, as far as when you were a kid, and growing up, junior high, high school, were you an active guy up to that point? How important was fitness? How important was nutrition in your family? How were those things going around in your life at that point?
I would just have to guess. I know people are more genetically well off than others, fit, whatever, but I've always been active, but I was never into sports. I was always a mechanic. I've always been mechanical. My dad was a mechanic, has been for 40, 50 years. And I was into motorsports and motorcycles, and I played, baseball as a kid and things like that. Never played football, never did track, I wasn't a team player, if that,
yeah.
And I'm still that way.
Yeah.
I grew up, pretty much just living with my dad. It was him and I, kind of bachelors our whole life. He's married 3 times in and out, but, sports wise, never really a part of my life at all.
Yeah.
Like I said, I never lifted weights, never hit a weight room. I stayed in shape to race. I used to race motocross.
Okay.
And that's pretty physical.
Yeah.
I stayed in pretty good shape for that. But
so how did you stay in shape as a young kid, as a teen, for doing something like that when you weren't lifting weights? I mean, what were you doing to stay in shape as a kid to do that?
Well, really, up until I was about 30, I could eat whatever I wanted and do whatever I wanted and stay within the same 5 or 10 pounds that I graduated high school. So I've really I've never fought weight.
Yeah.
The only time I got heavy is when I was drinking really heavy, and of course there's a lot of sugar in beer, and I was taking very poor care of myself. But as far as racing, I rode a lot. Motorcycle racing is very physical, and a lot of cardio in that, and just mechanicking, that's physical work.
Yeah. Yeah. So how far into the motocross scene did you get? I mean, were you getting to higher levels, or how long did you do it, or how did that go?
I had bikes since I was probably 8 years old, and took me, I think, probably till I was 17 or 18, and I actually rode a PJ1 Arena Cross series that took me around the country. I went to Denver and Des Moines and Rockford, and I raced some pretty high-level races, and got some pretty high-level injuries on account of
it. What kind of injuries did you suffer because of that?
I believe I've broke both of my wrists twice, got some fingers cut off, And the one that was the final straw was I broke my leg really bad and kind of exploded my knee, and that's where the metal in the knee come from. And it's just kind of something I'll have to deal with the rest of my life now.
Yeah. And how old were you when that happened?
17, I believe.
Okay.
When 17 or 18, right
Okay.
around in there.
Pretty heavy duty surgery kind of stuff for somebody who's 16 or 17.
Yeah, no, it definitely was. It was.
Yeah. What was that something that kind of stopped that career for you, or did you try and push through it, or how did it go from there?
I tried, but living, it was just my dad and I,
Mm-hmm.
and I think when I broke it, I was 17, but then I graduated right around when that happened, and I lost my school insurance and ended up having to go to work. So here I was, 18 years old, with a $25,000 knee to pay for, no insurance and no help. So I had to sell the bikes and all that stuff, and hit real life pretty quick.
Yeah. And so this was the point then when you said you tried to enlist?
No, it was before. Well, right, yeah, that had to have been my senior year because it was right around then.
Okay. And you got rejected then because of the knee surgery?
Yeah.
Okay. So how did life, it sounds like life took a little bit of a downturn at that point. What kind of path were you heading down as far as that?
I would say at the time it was more of an ego thing. I would have never noticed, I just brushed it off then. Well, I'll go do something else.
Mm-hmm.
And to the guys that listen to this that are in the service, and I've got several friends now, I very specifically remember what the Marine recruiter told me. He said, they ask you any injuries or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I told him, and he said, no, son, you'd probably be better suited in the Army with metal in your leg, kind of ribbon. And I think both recruiters were there at the time. And of course, my friends were doing one thing, and that's what I wanted to do. So
Right.
that was about the last thought that went into it.
Yeah.
Couldn't do what I wanted to do, so I didn't seek it anymore. But
right.
I just went to work. I took a little bit of vocational college to be a machinist right after high school, and I did that for, I believe, a year and a half. I was stuck on second shift, working inside a building, and it just drove me nuts. And I got a chance to get on a road construction crew when I was 19, I believe, and I've been doing that ever since. So, kind of.
And so, as far as your health and your fitness when all of this happened, what was kind of going on with that?
The leg was I put on some weight with the leg thing for sure, and then I recovered from that and tried to ride again, but it ended up being, with the medical bills and everything, I just had to come to the realization, vehicles and living on my own, I had to let it go.
Yeah.
And that's when I'd say the drinking probably picked up pretty. I ended up having a house with some friends, and what guys do when they live together. In 18, 19, 20.
Yeah.
A lot of partying, and there was no fitness other than working or
right.
Just being, genetically pretty fit guy to begin with.
Yeah.
That was about it. I didn't do any of the rehab I was supposed to do with the knee. I was too good for that. I thought I could do it all on my own. Of course, I didn't do any of it, and I pay for that now.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. What did they want to have you do for rehab?
Physical therapy. After I had my leg in a immobilizer where your knee locks in different angles.
Right.
I think so it doesn't freeze up in one spot. And then I was supposed to go in for physical therapy for mobility pretty much afterwards, and I just didn't do it. And I would have had to pay for that out of pocket at the time. So I just said, yeah, I can do it on my own. And never did. And to this day, I still don't have full range of motion in my right leg.
Wow.
So whether it would have been prevented or not, I don't know.
Right. So fitness wise, when you're doing this, obviously you're not very active at all, I'm going to presume at this point. Is that correct?
The road construction job was very physical. I mean, I was concrete, we did that's pretty much all I've done my whole life is road and bridge and concrete and just
Mm-hmm.
worked really hard.
Okay.
And it keeps you pretty fit.
Yeah.
So that's really all I had going for me for fitness.
Right. So at what point did you really kind of notice that things were taking a downturn with your fitness?
Well, let's see. I got married when I was 25, and from the time I was probably 19 to 25 was lots of drinking. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there was, yeah. Other than the job, I didn't. That, it was just an everyday life. The road construction, as many will tell you, is a very, the company that I worked for at the time, they didn't care if you drank in the trucks on the way home, and that just became routine. We get off work and stop at the gas station and buy a 12 pack and spend the whole ride home drinking.
Wow.
And then go to the bar every night after work. And I did that for 6 years,
Yeah.
pretty much every day.
Wow.
And ended up meeting my wife when I was 25. I had an apartment in town, and she lived down just like 2 apartments away from me. And I met her. I would tend bar at a local bar at night
Okay.
on the weekends, and I met her there. Ended up getting together because our apartments were close. And yeah, I guess the rest is history for that. I see.
So,
Was a
I mean,
very upstanding gentleman, I will say.
yeah. So at what point did you start to notice that things were bad? I mean, obviously you go through this period of drinking. It's probably not a period of your life that you're fully aware that this is not the best way to go about things. I mean, was there a point that you kind of hit? I don't like to use the term rock bottom in something like this, but I think it's probably pretty appropriate where you kind of realize you're like, wait a second, this is not the road I want to take, or this is not the way things should be going.
No, it is. And that rock bottom is, I mean, it hit me very hard. I was more of what anybody would say a functioning alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
I would say I got married and we had my wife had a daughter that was 2 when we got married, and I took her in, and she's called me dad ever since. And things were great, and I just, I backed off of the bar scene, transitioning into marriage, and we still went out and had fun like a young couple.
Yeah.
And I believe year and a half after we were married, my son Jake was born, and I still kind of kept doing the same thing. I drink every night on the way home. Not a lot. I wouldn't go to the bars anymore. It was a habit. It was a routine.
Right.
I'd buy a 6-pack, 12-pack, and that went all the way up till I believe I was probably 30 or 31. We'd had another daughter by then, and I remember it was Halloween of 2010. Uh, drinking was just a part of my life. It was. I mean, my in-laws would buy me a 6-pack of beer when I took the kids trick or treating there, and I would drink the beer driving the kids around trick or treat.
Wow.
That's
Yeah.
that's just how much of a part of my life that it was.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't take my wife out to eat unless they served beer where we went. So it was definitely a part of me. I didn't realize it at the time. And
Right.
Let's say Halloween 2010, we were getting the kids ready to go trick or treating, and we'd been passing the flu around. The kids had it, and wife was down, and she said, "Well, you just take them. I'm gonna stay home. I don't feel good." I said, "Okay," and she ended up getting really sick and going into having some seizures, and called me, come home, went to the hospital. Wasn't sure what was going on. Definitely wasn't the flu. Well, they found out she had kidney stones and treated her for that, sent us home. I'm probably butchering this a little. She could tell you a lot more play by play because it happened to her. But keep in mind, I'm the dad that's drinking during Halloween,
Right.
and then having to take care of a sick wife. And so anyway, we went to the hospital that night, came home, and it was okay. They gave her some medicine to for the kidney stones, pain medicine, which ended up being a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it was the next night or later that day, but anyway, she ended up going into convulsions and getting, I mean, deathly sick. And I took her back to the hospital and ended up, that was my waking point. It ended up, she had like a 6 or 7 millimeter kidney stone that they didn't see, and it blocked a ureter in her body, and it filled her entire bloodstream full of urine.
Mm.
So, and she went into septic shock, which the small hospital where we were at, they really weren't familiar with that, and they
Right.
didn't know. And she ended up leaving there in a helicopter. The doctor told me, he said, I don't think she's going to make it where she's going. I mean, those were his words. She'd lost all blood pressure and her heart stopped beating. And here I was, probably after a 6-pack of beer and 3 young kids at home. And I didn't know whether my wife was going to make a helicopter ride to
Wow.
a good hospital to take care of that. So that was rock bottom right there. I mean, the helicopter pilot, actually, I walked out there, you know, I was a mess trying to figure out what was going on. You know, all this just happened so fast. Here I'm thinking, you know, she's got kidney stones and she's going to die from that. You know, I couldn't even comprehend that.
Right.
And after the helicopter pilot told me, she gave me her personal cell phone number because I had to drive myself 2 hours to get to this hospital where they were flying her. And I didn't know whether she was going to be alive when I got there. The helicopter pilot gave me her number and took mine and said, I'll call you when I get to that hospital and let you know how it
Mm.
went. And she did. And she called me when she got there and said she's in ICU, but, you know, still alive. So I was very thankful of that. And got to the hospital, and I wasn't a lot. They made me sit out for a couple hours while they were trying to get her stabilized and treat this sepsis. And I was probably a good 3 or 4 hours before I got to see her, and had no idea whether she was going to make it or not. And they even told me that in ICU. And that was kind of where, you know, life really hit. You know, I knew what I was doing wasn't going to work. I was just like, you know, I cannot raise these children on my own. What do I got to do, you know, to clean my life up or whatever if I have to? And it was I believe it's a Catholic hospital. I don't know if that's right or not, but anyway, they could see that I was terribly upset, and they sent a preacher to the room to speak with me. Never forget it. Very large black man, probably 6'6", great big guy. Just, I mean, just a tower of a man. And he come up and put his hand on my shoulder and said, son, I'd like to pray with you. And I didn't really have religion in my life at the time. I didn't reject it, but you know, it just wasn't me. It didn't fit the bar scene and all that. So I, you know, I kind of brushed him off, you know, I just wanted to be left alone. He prayed anyway out loud right there with me, and I thanked him. And that was God chipping in, saying, you know, here's your last chance for your family, and you know, this was a guardian angel, and I'm a firm believer in that. That was a good tipping point. I don't know whether things had to drag down that far, but it was pretty low.
Yeah.
I mean, I had good job, beautiful family, and I was literally throwing it away. And it took something like that for me to realize, you know, you need to get your shit together.
Yeah.
So
That's an amazing story. And I mean, I think it a lot of times it takes those aha moments. And I mean, unfortunately, they come in a lot of different ways. And, you know, a lot of times, you know, it's just about what you need to really give you the kick over the edge and uh, back to the other side. So that all happens. I mean, I mean, obviously she got better. Um, and she recovered well, and she's, doing fine now. What kind of conversations did you have with her about all of this as she recovered? I mean, how is, I mean, obviously she's in this experience where she doesn't know you're going through all of this. And I'm guessing that when she wakes up and you have this conversation, she's probably like, who are you and what have you done with my husband, in a sense. I mean,
Well, I think she says that every day, John. But no, it was, I never want to feel that again. But it needed, I wouldn't wish that on her. I hate that it happened to her, but it
right.
happened. What happened to me, to wake me up, because I wasn't a good dad. I was a functional alcoholic. Like I said, I would work, come home, and I was just worried about what I was doing. I would go to my garage and work. I wouldn't help with kids like I should. And she just tolerated it.
Hmm.
She's a great woman. I mean, that's all there is to say. On me, and I was never a violent drunk. I would just go do my own thing.
Yeah.
I was just concerned about my agenda. I didn't
Yeah.
care that the kids needed babies or, and then this happened and I realized, I've got to help, and I've got to do the things I should. 7 years, and I got to be dad.
Yeah.
And we spent quite a bit of several years there transitioning with kidney stone doctors, and she had 3 surgeries, I think, to get those removed,
Hmm.
and still goes into this day for checkups. For
Wow.
there was so much internal infection in her. She had to see an infectious disease team. It was a deal. The University
Wow.
of Illinois did a study on her.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
they brought students in to do a study on her just because this was kind of a new, rare thing, I guess, for something to get that bad and live through it.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, they told us most people die from that.
Wow. So that all changes, and on top of it all, you decide at this point that alcohol was going to be a thing of the past for you. Is that correct?
Sitting in that hospital, she was in ICU for 7 days, and I never left. Thank God that I had good in-laws to keep our children.
Hmm.
I stayed there the entire 7 days, and never left her side. I just thought, you know what? That's the first time in 10, 15 years, let's say 10 years anyway, that I'd went that many days without having a drink. And I hung it up. I'm sure there was a lot to be unbearable after that.
It's not. Was it a hard road?
I don't really remember it now. And she would tell you, I was bitter. I used to chew a lot of tobacco too, and I kind of went to that. Well, which I always did that, but I got on to drinking non-alcoholic beer for a while, just to pass that. And I did get into drinking soda, which I put on quite a bit of weight for that because I never did drink soda.
Yeah.
And that was when I kind of got into being dad, got comfortable, and probably my heaviest. I was around 200 pounds,
Okay.
which that would be for me. That was extremely. I was comfortable. Let's just say that I
Yeah.
didn't put a thought towards fitness, and in all that, we'd been going to church, and for a lot of it, I just sat there. I was going because my wife wanted me to, and somewhere around in there, I met a man by the name of Tim Harding. He stood up and gave a speech at our church about drinking and being a bad dad and a bad husband. And he was about my age, a couple years younger, and it hit me even harder than I think the helicopter ride.
Hmm.
It, everything he spoke in a sermon just absolutely tore my heart out. It was everything that I had ever done wrong. He just brought it to light, and that was a very defining moment And I knew then that I really had to work on me.
Yeah, that's a hard thing to do, where you're working on yourself and you don't think it's selfish is a hard
Yeah.
thing to do. So
Yeah.
that's a really hard thing to do. So let me ask you then, what did that look like? What did it look like for you to start working on yourself?
Well, after we had heard Tim's sermon, it hit me hard enough that I told my wife, I said, I got to meet him. You know, we've been going to church here a while, and he was at that time, I think he was either a youth minister or I'm not sure. I don't remember. But anyway, I just connected with him, and I went up to him and I introduced myself, and I said, man, that really hit me where it needed to. Thank you. And they invited us to join their small group at their house that they had every Thursday night, Wednesday or Thursday night. And we did that for several years. We met with them once a week and just had Bible study and, shared this story with him, and walked through life together. And he explained the gospel to me and, just a lot of things.
Yeah.
It brought a lot. I was able to talk about things that I never would have shared with anybody. I mean, because I was alone growing up, really.
Yeah.
A lot of alcohol and parents and everything growing up, and broken families, and just never had a great home life.
Right.
And
Right.
I kind of got that, and was able to share that. And, yeah, just definitely started the healing process.
And going over a little bit towards the fitness side of things, you said you were up to 200. What did you decide that you needed to do to cause that shift to happen?
Well, everybody would get in those kicks just like everybody does at New Year's.
Yeah.
It's new year, new me, blah, blah, blah. And I would do things like that for a while. We would try to eat healthy. And that was really about all it amounted to, was trying to get diet in check. I still
Hmm.
never really considered going to a gym or anything. And here again, I don't remember how many years later, probably about 2015, the same guy at church had asked me, he said, hey, there's an endurance run. He asked me if I'd ever heard of the Ultimate Suck. And I said, no, I've never heard of that. And he said, well, it's coming up on Labor Day. Would you be interested in running it with me? It was a 4 hour, kind of like a Tough Mudder Spartan race type thing.
Hmm.
And I said, yeah, I'll look into that. And I went home and looked it up and thought, sure, I can do that. I work construction. I'm in good shape. And I signed up. I got online and signed up. And we were going to do it as a team. And come time about 2 weeks before, I'd called him and said, are you ready? And he goes, oh, man, I just had to go into the hospital and have my appendix taken out. He said, I can't do it. And I was like, oh, crap. I'm going to have to do this by myself. And
Okay, so tell me a little bit what is all involved in this suck, and then tell me and tell us all, what did you do to get in shape for it? Because endurance races are not like a 5K or a 10K, and it's
no,
not the place that most people start their competitive edge of doing anything fitness. So what's involved in it, and what kind of a training did you do to get ready for this?
well, I think we started this. I think he probably asked me that in about May or June, when the local college in Macomb, WIU, Western Illinois University, was where the guy that puts this event on, the Suck, he graduated from there with a degree in exercise science, and he gives a lot back to that college. So, and a lot of those people go to that church. And that's kind of how I think he heard about it there. And of course, another guy asks you for a physical challenge, you're going to say, yeah, I'm going to do that. And anyway, I just I didn't put a lot of thought into it because this event was 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Was how many hours?
4.
4 hours?
Yeah, it's a 4-hour endurance event.
Okay.
There's different stages of what you can do. They have a 4, 12, and a 36.
Okay.
And I'm, well, this 4 hour, you know, being who I am, that's going to be a piece of cake.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, was I wrong. I did the normal thing. I would run. I, of course, live out in the country, and I set up a running course. I would run a couple miles a week, do push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, things like that. But that was it. You know, I didn't have a training regimen. I wasn't consistent with anything. I think what my goal was is I wanted to have a sub 35K and be able to do 10 pull-ups and, you know, 50 push-ups,
Mm-hmm.
like that. And I thought that would be good. And did I ever get an education? No. I did well because I've always been an extreme. If I do something, I give it my all, just like I did when I was drinking. That's why that was the problem. When I did it, I gave it my all.
Right.
And that event beat me down, but more at the beginning of that event, I met the man who put him on, Joe Decker, and he shared his story on how he got into fitness. And he was a recovered alcoholic and drug user. And it was another, I mean, it aligned with my story. And we just clicked like we were brothers. You know, I thought, man, if this guy can do this, you know, what can I do to achieve, you know, and put myself in better health? But he went on to, you know, he was suicidal and he turned his life around and became the Guinness Book of World Records fittest man.
Wow.
And but anyway, he just absolutely killed me during this event because it turns out I grew up 15 miles from him and he was about 10 years older than me, but our hometowns were right next to one another. And since he was from California and come back here to do this event, but his hometown was, you know, right next to mine, and he was hard on the locals, and he rode me like a wet dog. It was good, but man, did I, you know, he's a military guy.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty much everything he did was, you know, like what you would do basic training.
Yeah.
A lot of push-ups, a lot of swimming, a lot of weighted rucking, burpees till you puke. I mean, they put you in a gas chamber and gas you with pepper spray while you're doing burpees.
Oh my word.
It's a so.
And so that was
But
the 4 hour
anyway,
event.
I went on.
Go ahead.
It was, and I won the 4-hour event. Uh, uh, there wasn't a lot of people to sign up for that. A lot of people were there for, you know, the 12 and the 36 were kind of the definitely the higher end of it.
Mm-hmm.
But the people we were competing against, most of which were Navy SEALs and Army Rangers and stuff like that. And it was a good boost. I mean, it gave me something, you know, I got in there and I got hooked. Once I made it through that 4-hour and didn't die. And the thing about those events is they run them at night. So you got a headlamp on your head, and most of it's in the woods, ponds and rivers. And there was a lot of scary stuff. I mean, it was a good reality check, and you kind of find yourself and see what you're made of.
Mm-hmm.
My wife stood behind me and she supported me. I took everything that I failed at, and when I would get home, I would just work on that much harder. I remember the first year they had, after you went through a lot of the running and the push-ups and the burpees and all that, you come to a station where there was 3 ropes and a log chain, all in the same tree. They were about 25 feet each, and you had to climb them all once after you had just got out of swimming a muddy pond. So you're wet trying to climb wet ropes and a wet log chain. And I couldn't do any of it. I couldn't climb. Nobody ever showed me how to climb a rope.
Yeah.
And the penalty for each rope that you couldn't climb was 50 cinder block burpees. with a 15-pound cinder block burpee over your head.
Oh my word.
You had to do 50. So I did 200 cinder block burpees for penalties. Climbing any of the ropes. It just literally killed me. I mean, it was bad. So
I bet. It sounds awful.
the very next day I came home and I'm it is. It is, but it's one of those things. You've done an Ironman. I mean, there's moments that get in your head.
Yeah.
Cold water, whatever, cold weather, you just suffer through it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
so in the
suffering definitely.
Yeah. In the period of time that you were training for this first one, you said you're just doing stuff around, you're running a couple miles, stuff like that. Did you start to notice a change in your general health?
No, I mean, yeah, I knew I was still too heavy.
Mm-hmm.
I probably had lost 5 or 10 pounds just because I'm sure that I did start to pay more attention to nutrition.
Yeah.
I don't really remember. That didn't really hit until I got into the longer. After that first one, that's when it really started. That's when I realized how bad a shape I was in and how much simple things really, really taxed me.
Uh-huh.
And, I definitely needed to cut some weight to climb a rope. And yeah, I really didn't have any idea. Like I said, I've been blessed with, I could not work out for the next year. And if I didn't eat like total crap, I'd probably only gain 10 pounds.
Yeah.
That's just me.
People like me hate people like you for that. So you get done with the first one and you get the bug.
Yep.
And what'd you decide to do next?
Well, I failed at climbing the rope, so I got on Amazon, whatever, and I ordered a rope, hung it in the barn. I built myself a pull-up bar outside. There were Atlas stones that I failed at.
Okay.
I met a guy who showed me how to make Atlas stones. So I cast my own Atlas stones and made them.
And how much does an Atlas stone, and for people who may not know, an Atlas stone is really just a big, round, perfectly circular rock, basically, correct?
Yep. Just a hunk of concrete. That's all it is.
Okay.
They go anywhere from 75 pounds to 300.
Oh, my word. So you're making these so you can practice for the next one.
Yep.
How big of ones are you making?
My biggest one is 150.
Okay.
And you got to squat them and get them up and throw them over your shoulder backwards.
Oh, and my word.
He had a series of those.
Okay. So you're doing that. You put a rope out in your barn.
Yep.
Pull-up barn. What else are you doing? I mean, because this is the part that I think is so cool, is just the way you created so much opportunity to get healthier.
Another signature thing to his event that I kind of forgot, which a lot of other events have adapted, that was a 50-pound sandbag. You had to make your own 50-pound sandbag, and it had to be able to withstand dropping it out of the back of a truck and not break. And the first year it was funny because I thought, I work construction, so I can get sandbags for nothing.
Yeah.
And I made my own, but what I didn't do is make it waterproof. And I just, he'd tell you, get you 2 rolls of duct tape and a sandbag and just tape it up.
Yeah.
Well, the first event you do is you take your 50-pound sandbag and you go on a 5K ruck through a creek, carrying this sandbag on your shoulder. Of course, you get tired and you throw it down. Take a break. Well, you drop it in the water. Sand gets wet. It gets heavier.
Yes.
So I learned a really hard lesson the first time. My 50-pound sandbag was probably about 70 pounds by the time I got done.
Oh, man.
And, after that, they'll tell you, oh, yeah, you should have wrapped that in the trash bag before you duct taped it up. So
you went from the 4-hour event to what? What was the next one you started training for?
12-hour.
Okay.
It was the same thing, just 12-hour. Longer, more harder tasks. And that 50-pound sandbag, I took it everywhere with me. I'd run all the local 5Ks. I'd take that sandbag just everywhere I went. Just carry it, pass it back shoulder to shoulder, shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah. And
That
so you
was,
do that, you build a pull, you're doing pull-ups. Where you build your pull-up bar at? Was that out in the barn too?
I built one outside out of 6x6s, and I've had one in the house in a doorway, just one of those cheap Walmart jobs.
Okay.
That you pinch in a doorway. I've had one there forever.
Okay.
And
And you put a rope out in the barn.
yep,
What else are you doing to get ready for this thing?
just running, pretty much running, and that sandbag. That was it. I had to come to a deal with my wife because, like everything, I went over the top. And I think a couple points in time was she said, "You might as well be drinking again because I never see." And
You,
she was right.
it is. It's an addiction.
It is.
There's no, you get bit by the bug and there's no going back. There's no going back.
Yeah,
And I think that's, yeah. And I mean, you find something that, and this is part of it for me, and maybe it was for you, but you find something that you're doing that you never imagined you could do before. And you're
that
just
is right.
like, this is amazing. This is amazing. I got to keep doing this because I never thought I could do this. I mean, the things that I've done and the things you've done, I'm sure we've both gone through that. We just never expected, that we'd do it. And once you start, you got to keep going because it's a great feeling. And we could probably call part of it ego. There's no question. But part of it's just that natural desire for a challenge. And so did you have a year then from the 4-hour one to the 12-hour one to get ready for that?
Yeah, the first 12, it's Labor Day every year. Here
Okay.
is a local race, and around the 4th of July or June.
Hmm.
It's a 5, 10, 15K in Hannibal, Missouri.
Right.
And that was kind of working into this 12-hour. I'd never ran a 10K, and I
Okay.
thought, I'm going to try that. And
Yeah.
it's known for being a really tough race because there's a lot of elevation in it.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'll try that. And I had some goals to meet. I wanted to run like a 23-minute 5K, and I wanted to get a 10K in under an hour. And I thought I'd be pretty good shape, cardiovascular wise. That was a
Yeah.
good running goal, and I did. I made the 10K in like 58 minutes, which was I was good with that because I've been told years ago not to run on this knee. That was
Yeah.
another thing that when I broke the knee. John, are you there?
Yeah. Yeah. You were cutting out for a
Can you
second
hear
there,
me?
but you're good. Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah. Okay. To go back to the knee thing, when the doctor that did my knee when I was 17 or 18, whatever, he told me then that at a normal lifestyle, that knee would only last 10 years. And here I am starting to do this stuff 20 years later on the same knee.
Mm-hmm.
And it bothered. Running has always bothered me. That's
Right.
kind of why I would do it. So I bought a bicycle. I started doing a lot of bicycling. Well, that was a bad thing to jump into right away because that flared up a lot of things in my hips that I'd not used in years. So I ended up causing a lot of problems, but I was able to work out of them and different physical therapies and things like that.
Uh-huh.
And I forgot another important part of this. I don't know how I forgot to mention this, but around the church going time when all that happened with my wife, I was one doctor appointment away from having a cage put in my back.
Oh, wow.
I got 2 or 3 ruptured discs in my lower back
Oh my gosh.
just from construction work. And had seen he was ready to send me to have something done. And somebody, I don't remember who it was, said, "Man, you need to get a second opinion. You're only, whatever, 35 years old, 34 years old, whatever I was at the time." And I said, "Okay." So I did. I asked around to some of my sports medicine friends and what I should do, and ended up meeting a good doctor who was very active, and he said, "You need to get stronger." And this was before all this event stuff. And again, it was like the construction thing, like, I'm strong, I work construction.
Right.
He said, "No, you really need to work on core." And I didn't understand it until I got to where I am now.
Yeah.
And I went through 6 months of steroid injections in my lower back, just different series, just to help,
Yeah.
inflammation, and it worked. That's been 10 years ago, and
Wow.
I've had any surgeries, any pain pills, and now I have almost zero pain.
Wow.
And that's, I could have been under the knife and cut on, and I didn't even.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to say that I don't have any pain, but it's definitely manageable.
Right. Right. So how did the 12-hour race go? We'll jump back to that real quick here.
Very good. I won it the second year. I got first place in the 12-hour. A lot more challenging, but all the things that I failed at the first year, I was able to do. I was able to climb all the ropes, do all the Atlas stones, and then I got bit. It was kind of one of them things, you start into this, and as soon as I got done with the 12, I'm like, I got to try that 36 hour.
Oh yeah, yeah. We know where this story's going. There's no question that we know where this story is going.
You can see the look on my wife's face, and because my training just intensified that much more when I know going into this 36 hour. But that's when I got serious with the diet, and I really didn't put much thought into my diet until you really don't know what your body can do until you're into something for that many hours.
Right.
I used to worry about how much water or what I should eat or drink before 5K, and you don't need anything.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But you get to go on past 12 hours.
Yeah. So what adjustments did you make to your diet?
Well, like I say, I work road construction, so I ate out of gas stations every day. I mean, that was pretty much McDonald's, whatever we were near, any restaurant nearby, Casey's 2 or 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, dinner. I work a lot of hours.
Yeah.
I'm gone 12, 14 hours every day in the summertime. And so I realized, I got to start packing lunch and, getting quality protein, and got to searching online, and a lot of help from the Order of Man group. I met several people in there that were nutritionists that were very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I ended up picking up the kettlebells, which is a huge part of my routine now. And I met a guy online that actually I pay him to draw me kettlebell programs.
Okay.
And that's been a very, very big part of my fitness.
Yeah. So and you've got all of this stuff at home. So tell me, how many kettlebells do you have, and what's the biggest one you're working with these days?
I got pairs all the way up from 20 until 50. I think I got a pair of 20s, a pair of 35s, a pair of 44s, a pair of 50s, and a single 90.
Okay.
90 is the biggest one that I have. That's, for my body size, that's the biggest one that I need.
Right.
That's a slug of iron.
Yeah. So you implement that into your routine. You're back working the same kind of stuff with the rope in the barn and the pull-ups and the sandbags, and you know where to put a trash bag over your sandbag this year and things like that. And around comes the next year with a 36-hour. I want to call it a ruck, but it's not a ruck. It's called the suck. So it comes to a 36-hour race. Tell us a little bit about what goes into a 36-hour race.
Well, in training for that, if you want to get online and look these up, there's a lot of information on it.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of step-by-step what you go through, but like I said, I knew I would need a lot for this 36-hour. I mean, you're talking, you don't sit down for 36 hours. I mean, this is straight through race.
Yeah.
So I did another 12 the following springtime. They had another 12-hour over at Nashville, Indiana, in May of that year, and I did that just to see how my training was coming along. And it was cold. I remember that it was in the 40s, and I ended up buying a wetsuit top because there's a lot of swimming involved.
Yeah.
It's 48 degrees outside.
Yeah.
Water temperatures in the 60s. You're bridging hypothermia. But I ended up getting second place on that one in the springtime, and it was probably the most difficult one that I ever did. I don't know why. just none of these two races are ever the same.
Right.
I mean, he doesn't make any of them the same. They all similar things, but I did very well in that. And the guy that placed first ended up becoming a very good friend of mine, and we train together now and trade. He's just a complete animal,
Mm-hmm.
but he's been a huge help as far as training. And he told me after we got done, he said, you only finished half hour behind me. You're going to do just fine in the 36. And that was a big confidence booster because he'd won the 36 hour before. He'd placed first in it years past. So as far as the training, I remember after the two 12-hour events, I remembered my feet being a huge, because one of the first things they do to you in that event is you're always carrying 50 pounds on your back. You got a backpack on with a minimum of 50.
Yeah.
And your feet just get so sore because they run you through mud and water and sand. You've never got dry feet. You've never got clean feet. And that's probably the hardest mental thing, to train yourself to carrying that much weight. Hot spots, blisters.
Yeah.
You just got to figure out how to work through all that. And that was probably the biggest part of my training, is I upped the weight and I did a lot more rucking at home.
Mm-hmm.
Once a week, I would go at least 10 miles, just throw that on, take off walking. I live 1.5 miles from a state park that's got 25 miles of trails in it, horse trails. So that's a very good,
Perfect.
I'm very lucky to have that.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Nicely groomed park. I mean, good trails, good hill climbs. That was a big part. And just, burpees, push-ups, pull-ups. I had a routine. I started to get into this, but the wife and I had a kind of the falling out that you're working out too much. We had to come to a happy medium. So I would get home from work, whatever time. I'd cook supper almost every night, and I would bathe and put the kids to bed, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, whatever. And then from 9 to 11, that was my time. I would work out for 2-3 hours every single night. Still having to get up at 4 in the morning and go to work. That year was very consistent. I didn't miss. Very seldom would I do much on Sundays. I'd walk or run on Sundays. That was kind of my leisure day. But other than that, I hit it. I pro, push-ups, pull-ups, burpees, and that sandbag. I mean, and then I got into the kettlebells.
Yeah.
That was pretty simple. Like I said, I tried to go to a weight room a few times, but I just felt like a sore thumb, whatever. Didn't know what to do. And the times that I'd get off work early or get rained out at construction, and I'd go pay the daily fee and go to the YMCA, and I'd go in there and I'd do pull-ups and push-ups and burpees in the YMCA. I'm staring at all this weight equipment and I'm doing the same thing that I do at home.
Yeah.
So I just stuck with what worked.
Yeah. So before you started all this, I think you mentioned at some point you were 200 pounds. How tall of a guy are you?
5'8".
5'8". Okay. So overall this, obviously your fitness improves. Did you lose a lot of weight, or did you gain a lot of muscle, or what happened at that point with all of this training?
Ever since I started, when I quit drinking and got off the sugar and all that, the weight kind of leveled. In between there sometime, I quit chewing tobacco too, 6-7 years ago. That's when the weight really hit, because there's a lot of sugar in that. And of course, I wanted to eat everything when I got off the nicotine. And that's where most of the weight came from. And once I leveled out and forgot about that, I got back down to around 180, 185. And that's pretty much where I always stayed. And then when I got to competing, I stayed 170, 180. My lightest, I think, after the event was probably 173, which was as light as I've been since I was 18.
Yeah.
And right now I'm 180, 182, somewhere in there. But I've put on quite a bit of muscle this winter.
Yeah. So. And so at 36 hour, how did it go?
Definitely the hardest thing I don't even know how to explain it. If you look this event up online on Live, I believe it's on Livestrong. It's the 7th hardest event you can do in North America.
Wow.
It's ranked number 7, and it lives up to its name. You want to talk about suck? It sucks.
Yeah.
The creator Joe was part of the Black Hawk Down, that movie.
Yeah.
He was in that, whatever you call the war.
Right.
His team was part of that rescuing guys. So part of that is part of his workout. He does a thing called the Mogadishu Mile, which is pretty well known in the fitness industry by now.
Yeah.
And I think you do 19, 19, 19. Everything's scheduled around 19. And that's almost how every race starts. You do 19 squat thrusters with your sandbag, 19 left push-ups, 19 right push-ups, and then 19 squats, all while holding the sandbag.
Yeah.
And then you run them 400 meters, I think, on each end of it. And you do that for 4 rounds. That's your warm-up. And then you take off and do a lot of rucking, and you do a lot of swimming, and you're on your own pace. You see other people, but it's not a team race. It's not structured to be a team race.
Right.
Like I say, you see other people. You just don't have. I mean, you got to prepare yourself to be alone for that many hours.
Yeah.
And in the 36, after 24 hours, you can have someone help you. Up until that point, nobody can even hand you a drink of water. You have to plan all that your own. And my wife crewed for me. So after, things that you think are not hard, after 24 hours, you sit down to untie your shoes and you can't hardly do it. having a little bit of help, and that's when you realize what the human body can do when you've worn yourself out that much, and you put some food in your body, and it's just like a blood sugar rush, and you feel like a new person. You know you're getting the good out of your energy.
Yeah.
But the 36 was pacing. It was a lot of pacing yourself. It was very, very tough.
Yeah.
Mentally, it's after 24 hours, it gets to be a mental game. Really, it does. I mean, because you're seeing things, you're kind of hallucinating.
Yeah.
Because you're going all day and all night, and you're not taking a break. You just.
Mm-hmm.
I think I had 4 pairs of shoes during the race, and you just try to transition shoes and socks because they position it to where about every 2 to 3 hours they're putting you in the water.
Yeah.
And that way you don't get comfortable.
Right.
So you got to prepare for, your pants scalding you, your feet blistering, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So how did it go?
I ended up 3rd place out of, it was not a large amount. 10 people finished that year.
Mm-hmm.
Half of the field dropped out with hypothermia.
Wow.
So it ended up that Labor Day getting into the 50s. And the last task that you have to do is we swam up a local river at night, 8 miles, which I don't know how to size it. It's probably a 40, 50-foot wide river, average 3 to 5 feet deep.
Mm-hmm.
And they just send you up it at night with your food and your water. And it was cold. And you're fighting the current. And you're fighting fish jumping out of the water and hitting you in the head. And it gets pretty dark and lonely out there. I mean, because you're in the middle of some rough country, and you don't see people for 3-4 hours.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it was very tough. Towards the end, the very last task, everybody thought that the river walk was the last task.
Yeah.
And we finally, I ended up hooking up with a couple of guys walking the last bit with them. And we get out of the river, out of the creek where we're going, and we start to see some headlights and people hooping and hollering for us. You guys have made it. You're here. And everybody thinks they're done, and it's like 3, 4 in the morning, freezing cold. I had a neoprene wetsuit top on plus a trash bag, and I'm shivering. I mean, I absolutely can't move hard enough to stay warm. And we get up there, and everybody gets a chance to stand by the fire. And my wife had to change the shoes. for me. I changed my shoes and socks, and that was like $1 million. And I said, okay, what's next? And we all thought we were going to get to take our stuff back up to our home base. And they said, no, grab your buckets and your sandbags, and you got to do a 5K with 50-pound sandbag in each bucket, carrying 5-gallon bucket. And you only got so much time to do it. So we had a 5K uphill with, you got 60 pounds in each hand. And it was uphill, downhill on gravel roads. And it was awful. And in this time, I had torn up that knee pretty bad. So, and I'd taken, I think, probably 15 to 20 ibuprofen in the last several hours of that race just to keep going. But the mental state I was in was, I'm 30 hours into this thing. I can't quit. You know, if my leg's broke, I'm going to finish.
Yeah.
And my wife walked beside truck. My knee hurt so bad. I did some meniscus damage, and it was hitting a nerve in there, and the bones were touching. Something was going on. And I'd stopped and taped it up and just, you know, she was a good pick them up and go. I'd set them down. Come on, you're almost done. I mean, she kept her foot in my ass. Just pretty much like she has through the whole marriage.
So you finished that third. What's next?
Well, I knew I had done some damage to my knee. I hadn't quite come to terms with it yet, but after a race of that caliber, you're sore like nothing you can ever imagine. I mean, you've been up for, and of course, o'clock that morning, went to work, got my stuff. So I'd been up for 50 some hours plus this race, and go home, I get some sleep. And of course, you wake up, you feel like you've been hit by a truck, everything's sore, you hurt. You're trying to get your nutrition back, because I was dehydrated and malnourished, because you're working so hard, you really can't eat during this event.
Right.
I mean, I lived off of, you know, tablespoons of peanut butter and beef jerky and handfuls of nuts and hard-boiled eggs. That's all I ate for 36 hours.
Yeah.
And but anyway, I got back to health, and there was a local 5K that my son wanted to run, I think a week later, 7 days later. And I thought, oh, shoot, yeah, I'll give it a go. And I made it 3/4 of the way through the 5K at about a 7-minute per mile pace. And that knee just flared back up again as I walked. I mean, I almost had to have somebody come get me. I was too proud for that. I had to finish it. So I walked in, and I knew that it was hurt. And that's when I went and got it looked at, got it x-rayed, and started getting steroid shots in my knee.
Yeah.
Actually, just ago that I tore it up. So I've been getting by on the steroid shots, and that's where I've kind of transitioned more into the kettlebells now, and I quit running.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of got the running bug again, so I want to get this knee figured out.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I'm at right now.
So you mentioned way back at the beginning, you're about to turn the corner around 40. I vaguely remember 40. You're about to turn the corner to 40, and you've got some goals for 40. What's in store for 40 for you?
I would just like to be in the best shape of my life, you know, and show my kids what it can look like to age gracefully, I guess, not, you know, and be able to do what they want to do and hike. And I'm a big outdoorsman. We hike and camp all the time. Backpacking is a huge part of what I do in the wintertime. And I help lead a local scout troop. So we do a lot of hiking and things like that. Just, if it's outdoors, we're doing it, hunting, fishing. And I didn't realize, like I say, and no one does until they get on their fitness journey, how bad a shape they were in.
Right.
But now I'm actually helping train 2 other guys that are doing this event with me. So every Saturday morning we go for a ruck run. We do push-ups, calisthenics. I mean, we work out for couple hours every Saturday morning at 4 or 5 in the morning. And I I draw them up programs for what I did, what worked for me. And they're having a lot of success and doing great and having fun doing it. And it's, like I said, you just realize, there for 3 years, I could run a 25-minute 5K, and I realized how good I felt, staying in condition.
Yeah.
Just, it feels good. It's hard to go back to thinking, man, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Just kind of sticks with you.
Yeah. And it sounds like you've transitioned into stuff that you can do even in spite of the difficulties you've got with your knee. I mean, it sounds like you transitioned. It sounds like you found stuff to do to stay healthy in spite of that till you can address that issue.
I think you probably remember, and I know Alex would, when I was coming off of that knee, it got me down.
Yeah.
Because I was, if I hadn't hurt that knee, I had a lot of big plans of things that I wanted to do. And I knew that I couldn't do it with that. And I couldn't afford to take off work to have my knee fixed so I could do some crazy endurance races. I had to take care of my family first.
Yeah.
So I just kind of laid off, and I shared with the group I know looking for help of any kind. And Alex gave me some exercises to do to help strengthen that, or to at least try it, without knowing what was wrong, stability and things like that. He was a big help. I mean, he drew me up, whatever you call it, exercises, and I did it, and it did help, but it didn't help what was inside going on.
Right. Man, it's just impressive. And I mean, we're kind of wrapping up here, but we didn't even get a chance. I mean, again, one of the things that I said at the beginning and is just, I mean, in and amongst all of this, and I think this is one of the greatest challenges for us as dads, as we do this stuff, is doing all this stuff and trying to stay healthy for us, but also trying to carry on the full-time job of being a dad. And obviously that's the most important thing for you. You had a scare that you didn't know what you'd have to do if it was going to be you flying solo after your wife had her problems. And I mean, so that's one of the great things is I think we do this and we get wrapped up to these events, whether it's an Ironman or whether it's a suck or whether it's whatever kind of endurance ultra racing or whatever it is. But in the end, it comes back to really being as engaged as we can and passing this on to our kids. And I mean, I've certainly seen it with you, doing 5Ks, doing bike rides, doing all those kind of things, the hiking, the outdoor stuff. I mean, that's the stuff that's going to leave, the impression. And it's a great reason to keep doing it, even if you can't do, the fun stuff that we all like to take the challenges and do. So, I mean, it's awesome that you've been able to kind of refocus and kind of suck up your ego a little bit, and it's tough to do, and put that priority firsthand. Any advice or anything that you would want to pass on to people who are kind of, struggling down this journey themselves, trying to do these things and trying to, balance it with being a parent and things like that?
Well, like I said, no doubt I went overboard, but it's something you find a balance. I mean, if your wife's behind you and they got a way of seeing that you're improving. There was a lot of times where she showed resentment and still does, but the pinnacle of this for me is when I'm doing a little exercise routine in the living room, whatever, my kids climb on my back, whatever, start doing push-ups. We've had a rule in the house where if you go through the doorway with the pull-up bar, you got to do a pull-up. It's a rule. You can't walk through that doorway without using that pull-up bar.
Yeah.
And when I'm sitting on the couch, I just see them, they'll just start doing it. No, I didn't tell them to. It's just they're making good decisions. And Dad's going out for a run. Hey, can I go? Can I ride my bike beside you? The kids were big assets. That was one of the big things that carried me. When I went to the 12-hour over in Nashville, Indiana, we took the kids and they camped out. And I was coming up for the last leg of the race at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning. and there's two of my kids cheering me on, just walking along beside me. Here I am, buddy, and they're running and cheering, Dad, come on, and just tears you up. And it, and having my wife right there with them. There's, as far as advice, just start. I mean, in groups like this, I've gained so much knowledge out of meeting, you, Alex, Chris. I mean, there's countless people on here that I've, just had conversation with that, if you get stuck on something, somebody knows more about it than you do.
Yeah.
Just be willing to do things, and for me, for my side, I got nothing bad to say about a gym. If I had one close, I'm sure that I would use it, but you literally need nothing to get yourself in shape but yourself. Yeah. I mean, if you got a pair of shoes and you can get outside, whatever, you can do it.
Yeah.
Just a lot of people, I know I got hung up in supplements and things like that. I thought, I don't need any of that. I really don't. I mean, it might help, but I don't need any of it.
Yeah.
I can stick through and just eat right, and it'll get you there.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This has been awesome, man. It's been fun to talk to you in depth and hear your story a lot more. It's been fun to hear what you have pushed through. It's been awesome to hear your accomplishments and the way you've adjusted your focus from some of those things to your family and encouraging their fitness. It's a legacy you're passing on, and that's a great thing. That's a great thing.
I appreciate your time on here, John. It's all you guys. It's been a privilege, and there's a lot of help in all this. I mean, you're a very inspiring man yourself.
Thank you.
I've watched your journey.
Yeah.
And you have changed a whole new person. I mean, it's, I frequently message you, I'll just chime in, things come across your mind. You think, you know what? Somebody might need to hear a good job today. Those are the kind of things that light my spark when, people see you haven't seen in a long time and you just hear a comment like, hey, well, you look different. That feels good. It really does.
It does. It does. So thank you so much for your time. This is going to be great. I know I'm sure everybody's enjoyed hearing this story, and thank you for inspiring so many of us.
Thank you, John.
Okay.
See ya.